I can remember as a young boy getting up on these cold, frosty mornings. Even getting up when sometimes there'd be a little light skip of snow on in these mountains. But the neighborhood would spread the word around the area, and we'd all get together for slaughtering an old hog or a group of hogs. The neighborhood worked together to share this meat. Now that's the way it was growing up in these mountains. But nowadays, people don't slaughter their own meat. They send them to a slaughterhouse and have them cut up for them if they raise their own hogs. It's cheaper this way. But why do that, people say? You can go to the grocery store and get any cut of meat you want if you can pay for it. Hams of any kind, any type part of the hog or beef. That's the way it is, if you can pay for it. And back then, they didn't have no such thing as a freezer they do today. You just get all the meat you want and whatever, and you freeze it. So we're gonna look at how they used to do things in these old mountains, how they stored their meat up for the winter. Now, people in these mountains, all up and down these Appalachians, were kind of isolated back in them days, didn't have the technology and the convenience it is today. And people lived out in these rural areas across America, on these ridge tops, mountains, hollers, and they lived a hard life. And they depended on each other, because they didn't have a lot of money back then. It was just physical labor, but it was a simple life. And they had big families. They hit a lot of mouths to feed. So they had to get out and make it for their upcoming winter. And they lived in places like this, up these hollers and these mountains. Big families too. And they had their own little tract of land they considered themselves wealthy, where they could raise what they wanted. And even the bigger farms that had a lot of land, they basically done the same thing. They just had more to deal with. And they raised their own poultry, chickens. Chickens was a big thing, always, but they didn't kill as many chickens to eat as you'd think they would. They liked the eggs. These eggs was gold. They was money to be made. And what I mean by that is, they didn't have much money, that these eggs was a big commodity down at the old country stores in the communities. They would trade them for things that they couldn't make or raise or grow. So they come in handy, these eggs did. But everybody had a little hog lot, seems like. They'd acquire some hogs in the spring, trade for it or whatever, and they'd raise them all summer long, fatten them up, feed them with what they want to feed them with, so they know what they was getting when they got ready to slaughter. And the beef's the same way, but mostly the beef was on the big farm. They had more to deal with, more money. This was expensive. But everybody on these little farms had a little old milk cows. And they depended on these cows. These cows, you usually didn't have to round them up. They knowed when it was milking time, they'd come to the barn waiting on you. And this milk was really handy with a bunch of kids. Even I love milk today. And they made a lot of stuff out of this milk. They made buttermilk and a lot of cow butter, a lot of churning going on. And these little old farms, there was a lot to do if you kept them up, prepare for winter. This is not just all of a sudden. This was hard work for the whole family, because they know old man winter's just around the corner. And all year long in the good weather, they prepared for this, because they knowed it was coming. So usually in the fall, first time it got cold, good frost, hard frost, freeze, they would get together in the community and they would have a hog slaughter, hog killing. Everybody'd get their hogs together in these big farms. But usually the little farmer, just the family, close friends, and some neighbors would get together and they would do their hog killing, slaughtering their hogs for winter. And they shared the meat. They'd boil these hogs and scrape the hair off of them, gut them, and then skin them, quarter them up. And here's what they got out of the hog. You heard the old phrase of eating high on the hog? Well, I guess the more money you got, the higher on the hog you got to eat. That's the way it was. And nothing went to waste on these hogs. I've always heard that the only thing they didn't use was the squeal. And here they are boiling. What are they boiling? And made their own lard too. Made their own lard to cook with. And I growed up on this lard, and a lot of yous did too. And they didn't waste nothing. After they quartered up and got all the meat and made lard, they used to make what they call cracklings, the skin. We call them pork skins today. You can buy them at the grocery store. But that's what they make. Nothing went to waste. Now the beef, it was a little more strenuous work, but they slaughtered them too. Back in them days, it was hard work. These are heavy animals. And here's the parts that got out of the beef. A lot of meat. And it took a lot of work to process them too. So that's why it took so many to do this thing. And they would smoke their meat after they cut it up. And they would share it with the people that helped slaughter them. They even done wild game this way. Hung it, smoked it in hickory. This is some of the old smokehouses of the days. They would use seasoned hickory to smoke their meat. Now here's an old smokehouse that I'd found on a big old farm place that I got to visit one time. I'll share it with you. I got to go inside it. They'd been refinishing it, cleaning it up. This one's old. This is probably 200 years old. You can see it, they've cleaned it up. Old bricks, and here's the old roof logs that they hung their meat over after they processed it, smoked it. This is where they hung it. A lot of meat hung in here at one time. I thought that was awful cool to see that. But anyway, they smoked a lot of meat. This is how they cured it, preserved it. They even packed it in salt back in the old days to preserve it. And they packed them in lard too. And they done a lot of this too with meat. Yes, they canned it. Canned meat. A lot of meat was canned. As long as it was sealed and prepared right, it'll last a long time, especially for cooking little stuff. Now back, like I said, all year long they prepared, and if they had a good year on a garden, a bounty, they would share it with the family and friends and neighbors, and they all harvested together. And they would spend days processing all they harvested out of these gardens. And I mean to tell you, there's a lot of work to this, but it paid off in the end. And they canned everything. You can see all the canning here went on. I mean, if it could be canned, they canned it. This is how they preserved for the wintertime. All the vegetables and meats too. So they didn't have a want for nothing come wintertime. They just go down to the cellar or wherever they kept their cans and got whatever they needed to cook with. And what they can with, many and many a gallons and quarts canned in these old canners. These old canners on an old wood stove too. wood, or cold stove. A lot of canning went on. These women worked hard at canning this food and processing it. Nowadays, you can still buy these ball jars. They come in cases like this of all different sizes. And here's just some of them. Different sizes, like I said. And it's got the history of them, too. You could tell how old the jars are by the design of the ball symbol on them, the dates here. I thought I'd share that with you, how old them old jars you find like that. And these women, it was a busy time of year when they harvested out of the gardens. They prepared their meat and stuff for wintertime. But it paid off in them cold winter months. When the family didn't have a want for nothing, you was able to go get what you need out of your cellar, prepare a good meal for the family. It all paid off. And these old cook stoves, these old wood coal stoves, seems like something tastes so much better on them. So much better. Ain't nothing better than a good old pan of fried taters on one of these stoves. Man, they're good. Good old bowl of soup beans on top of it. Big old fresh pan of cornbread too, with some cow butter. Talk about some good eating. With your favorite meat that you prepared months before. 'Cause old man winter is on his way, and it is too late. So I hope you enjoy these little videos. They need to be shared of how our people used to live in these mountains. So I want to thank you for watching. God bless. Take care, and I'll see you next time.